Confessions of an SEO. These episodes are short and with a fair amount of tough love to the SEO industry. So while I can't help but insert some SEO principles indirectly, these audio essays really focus on the human side of SEO and marketing. Welcome to Confessions of an SEO 2024 Mountain Edition. In fact, on this 11th episode of the summer, this is the last one from Vermont this year. Perhaps ever. One never knows. And I've decided that recording from the road is not what I want to do next week. So I will rebroadcast the only interview episode I've ever done on Confessions, which was my confession conversation with Ted Kubitis in 2022 when Google shuttered down the parameter tool in Google Webmaster Tools. I say it's apropos, and around here, what I say goes. So let's start with the elephant in the room. Google announced a core update last Thursday. So, okay, now we have another data point that updates get rolled out on Thursdays. And things we know, there was a pent-up demand for an update that would reverse all the bad stuff from last year's September helpful content update. Now, on the surface, it would appear that through tools, some sites that were hit according to the timeline last fall are seeing what some are calling a reversal of fortune. So much so that the comments on this phenomenon were like, well, if no changes were made on those sites and Google just tweaked a few switches and these sites coming back to life, then Google is responsible for billions of dollars lost trade for those companies that were so badly impacted. Ouch. And yes. So the operational term, of course, in all of that was if no changes were made on those sites. I'll get back to that part shortly. And let's not discount one of Google's newest possible ranking factors, kvetching about it online and wrangling a direct connection with a Google liaison and engineers. Yes, there are reports that HouseFresh, who publicly accused Google of killing their rankings in favor of big brands, at least on the surface, tools are to be believed, getting some air under their flaps. And I'm happy for them if this is true. I know I'm not the only one that spent some time investigating their claims and really could find no evidence that Google did anything other than what Google does: crawl, index, rank, and serve. And of course, make a lot of money. And now, what I did see were a lot of pages on their site that at the time, they answered the same question over and over and over. So I can't help myself. I went to see and to specifically revisit those pages that were having some of the roughest time. And that brings me back to the earlier comment, if no changes were made on these sites. And this update, pushed them back up. So if that's the case, if they didn't make any changes and suddenly Google rewarded them again, well, Google would have had to have been responsible for their losses. But what? I don't know. If only there was a way to know if changes in content were made, she said. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Forensic SEO is my word for what I do. And I do find I get more refined in describing it the longer I do it. And it's a way really, I think, to keep us all honest, especially at times like these. So please don't mistake what I'm saying as being a Debbie Downer. There's no one who would be happier for these sites like HouseFresh to regain their positions. And I'm a curious person. And testing indexation, like I am, that was my doorway into uncovering through what the SERPs told me, what the helpful content targeted. And no, I will say this until it's no longer true. It is what I'm talking about, and when I say helpful content, it is not the circular logic of opinion that gets confused with data on the helpful content system. For instance, in the indexation testing this past couple of days, it's almost like Katie left the barn door open at the moment, or I should say the moment the update started. Now, on test sites, these are the lowest of the low, right? These are not experiments in a live production site that's generating tens of thousands of dollars a month. But indexation boiled down to its lowest possible level of quality and yet still get through the indexing system. So when a test site increases almost 20% in size of its index content, well, that's a lot of surface area. And I'm strictly looking at the indexation process. And based on my experience, that increase, that almost 20% increase in site size between, 2 page report updates in Search Console since the core update started, that is not normal. All of these pages were in the crawled or no index section of Search Console, that crappy little site. Now, if that's happening across the spectrum of sites in general, well, through a tool which is estimating traffic and visibility on live pages with money keywords and supporting keywords, well, that might look awfully similar to what is being called spontaneous recoveries. So hold that thought. Getting back to HouseFresh, I thought it would be a good idea to look at one of the pages that perhaps had previously been a heartthrob, but became a little heartsick. Sorry about that. It was the page about best air purifiers for pets. So I thought if I could find something out, I should write out my questions so I know what questions I have, and then I can recognize the answers. So first off, is that page the same as it was back in the spring? Because if it were the same, that would lend credence to Google being characterized as a villain in this post that thought if nothing had changed but Google, then Big G was responsible for the losses. Second question, is that particular page competing against all the other pages that it was earlier in the year? And 3, what improvements did I see? So here's the answers. No, and not what you think. Okay. 1, definitely the page is not the same. There were lots of modifications, specifically, and I think significantly, in how the headers were handled in that article. There's also lots of internal linking that was removed. So in short, definitely confirmed content changes were made, and I'm not saying that they were minor ones either. Now, 2, looking at page competition, there were one time 6 different pages vying for that term, best air purifier for pets. And it looks like out of those 6 pages, like one was the page, so there'd be 5 others. One was consolidated, so it forwards over to that page. One was just straight out removed, 4.0 forward, and another was redirected to a page more about pricing. And there were some others that were still alive, but no longer competing for those same terms. And again, in those cases, looking at those pages, I would say it had to also do with the header treatments being changed, reducing signals to Google that what that particular entity was in the H2, that it wasn't as crazy important as they had it set up. I mean, it's still in there. It's just treated differently in the HTML. All right. Now, looking at the overall improvements, they were not as significant yet, because I'm guessing that it will become more beneficial as time goes by. A lot of the search phrases that used to be split between at least 4 of those pages are now consolidated into one, which makes a lot of sense. And clearly, I would say it's certainly not in a position where I would guess that its impressions in search, they weren't as high, perhaps as they will be. And this is funny because sometimes I just can't help but notice things. There's evidence that someone is testing if date updates will trigger a freshness signal, but not an air freshness signal, right? For that, we need air purifiers. So this is where I am. I'm still holding out on declaring if Google has completely reversed their helpful content system, or if they have adjusted the site radius threshold of some of the helpful content classifier to more merciful levels, or if it's all down to content changes. Likely, it's going to be some combination, I think, of all of that, and very hard to point a finger at. Looking through tools that look at a very composite look, I think you're going to have to peer down into the actual data from the site that Google's provided. Now, interestingly enough, I have access to one that was dead on arrival. So if it starts to come alive again, it won't be because any content was changed. Well, that's it for me this week. If you need help with your site and you don't know where to dig, go ahead and text me. If you've done everything that you can think of and you've run out of options, this is the number you need to write down, 512-222-3132. And if you'd like to stay on the cutting edge of the state of indexing and Search Console and maybe a little bit how it all rolls together, you should check out Crawl or No Crawl on Substack. You can Google that and you'll find it. Thank you for being a listener. If you have questions or topic ideas, I want to hear from you. And you can also text to the same number, 512-222-3132. Thanks again. And until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.